A devoted mother of 3 from Texas hides a dangerous affair from her hard-working husband, convincing her children to become accomplices in her deception. But 2 years after a bloody confrontation that left their father hospitalized and their family shattered, contractors renovating their home discover a hidden recording device that reveals the shocking truth about what really happened that night. Diana Martinez seemed like the perfect wife and mother in the small town of Bluebird, Texas. With her warm smile and active involvement in school events, nobody suspected the devastating secret she was hiding. Her 3 children, 16-year-old Thomas, 14-year-old Jessica, and 12-year-old Michael, had accidentally stumbled upon their mother's forbidden relationship, and what started as an innocent attempt to protect their family would soon spiral into a web of lies that would tear their world apart. But the real shock came 2 years later, when workers tearing down a wall in their family home made a discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about that fateful night. Bluebird, Texas, sits 30 miles southeast of Austin, a town where everyone knows everyone and secrets are hard to keep. With a population of just over 8,000 people, it is the kind of place where Friday night football games bring the entire community together, and where neighbors still wave from their front porches. The Martinez family had called Bluebird home for 12 years. Marcus Martinez, a construction foreman with calloused hands and a gentle heart, had moved his family there when Thomas was just 4 years old. He worked long hours building custom homes for Austin commuters who wanted small-town charm with big city accessibility. Marcus took pride in his work, often spending evenings sketching plans for weekend projects around their own modest 2-story house on Elm Street. Diana Martinez had embraced small-town life with enthusiasm. At 38, she was known throughout Bluebird for her volunteer work at the elementary school and her famous chocolate chip cookies at church bake sales. Her shoulder-length auburn hair and expressive brown eyes made her instantly recognizable at community events. Diana worked part-time at the Bluebird Community Center, coordinating activities for senior citizens and organizing seasonal festivals that brought families together. Their children reflected their parents' values. Thomas, the eldest, had inherited his father's steady demeanor and his mother's social skills. As a junior at Bluebird High School, he played varsity basketball and maintained a 3.8 grade point average. Teachers often praised his maturity and leadership qualities, noting how he looked after his younger siblings without being asked. Jessica, the middle child, possessed an artistic soul and keen intuition that often surprised adults. She spent hours sketching in her bedroom and had won several art contests at the county fair. Her teachers described her as thoughtful and sensitive, someone who noticed details others missed. Michael, the youngest, was the family comedian. His infectious laugh and creative imagination made him popular among his classmates. He loved building elaborate structures with blocks and had already announced his intention to follow in his father's footsteps as a builder. The Martinez house stood on a quiet street, lined with oak trees and well-maintained lawns. Their white 2-story home featured a wraparound porch where Diana grew tomatoes and herbs in decorative pots. Marcus had built a workshop in the backyard where he taught his children basic carpentry skills on weekends. The interior reflected Diana's taste for comfortable lived-in furniture and family photos covering every available surface. Friday nights meant family movie nights with homemade popcorn and root beer floats. Sundays involved church services followed by lunch at Diana's favorite Mexican restaurant. During summer breaks, they took camping trips to state parks where Marcus taught the children to fish, while Diana prepared meals over the campfire. Their marriage had weathered typical challenges: financial stress during Marcus's early career struggles, sleepless nights with newborns, and the occasional disagreement about parenting decisions. But they had always presented a united front to their children and their community. Marcus surprised Diana with flowers on random Tuesday afternoons, and Diana left encouraging notes in Marcus's lunchbox when he faced difficult job deadlines. The children adored both parents, but in different ways. Thomas respected his father's work ethic and sought his advice on important decisions. Jessica felt closest to her mother, sharing dreams about art school and future travel plans. Michael bounced between both parents, seeking his father's help with building projects and his mother's comfort when code playground conflicts arose. Their extended family lived scattered across Texas, with Diana's parents in Houston and Marcus's sister in Dallas. Holiday gatherings required careful planning and long car rides, but the children looked forward to seeing their cousins and hearing family stories passed down through generations. The trouble began in September, when Diana started working additional hours at the community center. The town had received a grant to expand programming for local seniors, and Diana eagerly accepted the role of activities coordinator. The position required her to collaborate with local businesses and service providers, which brought her into contact with Ryan Cooper. Ryan Cooper was everything Marcus was not. Where Marcus was steady and predictable, Ryan was charming and spontaneous. A real estate agent who had moved to Bluebird from Dallas 2 years earlier, Ryan specialized in luxury properties for wealthy clients relocating from urban areas. His success allowed him to drive a sleek black sports car and wear expensive suits that made him stand out in a town where most men wore jeans and work boots. At 35, Ryan was divorced with no children. He lived alone in a modern townhouse he had purchased through his own agency, complete with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. His walls displayed abstract art rather than family photos, and his refrigerator contained takeout containers instead of homemade leftovers. Diana first noticed Ryan during a community center meeting about organizing a senior citizen real estate seminar, while other local professionals presented their ideas with prepared notes and nervous energy. Ryan spoke confidently without referring to written materials. His presentation about downsizing options for empty nesters impressed everyone in attendance, including Diana. After the meeting, Ryan approached Diana to discuss logistics for the seminar. Their conversation extended beyond business topics as they discovered shared interests in travel and photography. Ryan had visited European cities Diana had only seen in magazines, and he showed her photos on his phone of architectural details that fascinated her artistic sensibilities. Their professional relationship provided natural opportunities for extended conversations. Planning the seminar required multiple meetings, and Diana found herself looking forward to these sessions with an anticipation that confused her. Ryan remembered details about her family and asked thoughtful questions about her volunteer work and her children's activities. The emotional connection developed gradually. Ryan listened to Diana's concerns about the challenges of balancing work and family responsibilities, with an attention that made her feel heard and valued. When she mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the demands of coordinating multiple community events, Ryan offered practical suggestions and even volunteered his own time to help with promotional materials. Diana began staying later at the community center when Ryan was scheduled to visit. She found herself choosing her clothing more carefully on days when she knew they would meet, selecting outfits that made her feel confident and attractive. These small changes went unnoticed by Marcus, who was dealing with a particularly demanding construction project that required his full attention. The first physical contact happened during a moment of shared laughter over a humorous misunderstanding with one of the senior center participants. Ryan touched Diana's hand briefly while they both laughed, and the contact sent an unexpected rush of emotion through her. The moment passed quickly, but Diana found herself replaying it throughout the following week. Their relationship crossed professional boundaries when Ryan invited Diana to lunch at a restaurant in the next town, ostensibly to discuss expanding the real estate seminar into a monthly series. During that lunch, their conversation moved beyond business topics into personal territory. Ryan shared details about his divorce and his reasons for leaving Dallas, while Diana found herself opening up about her own dreams and frustrations in ways she had not done with anyone in years. The children discovered their mother's secret relationship on a Thursday afternoon in late October. Thomas had forgotten his geometry textbook at home and convinced his basketball coach to let him retrieve it during practice. He expected to find the house empty, as his mother typically worked late on Thursdays, and his younger siblings had after-school activities. Instead, Thomas walked into the kitchen to find his mother sitting very close to a man he did not recognize. They were holding hands across the kitchen table, and their conversation stopped abruptly when Thomas appeared. Diana's face turned red as she quickly introduced Ryan as a colleague from the community center who had stopped by to discuss an upcoming event. Thomas noticed several details that troubled him. His mother was wearing makeup, which she rarely did for casual meetings. The man's expensive clothing seemed out of place in their modest kitchen. Most significantly, they had been sitting in chairs that were positioned much closer together than necessary for a business discussion. The man left quickly after Thomas arrived, and Diana spent the rest of the evening acting unusually cheerful and asking detailed questions about Thomas's school day. Her behavior felt forced and unnatural, raising additional concerns in Thomas's mind. Thomas wrestled with his observations for several days before deciding to confide in Jessica. He found her in her bedroom on Saturday morning, working on a sketch of the oak tree outside her window. When he described what he had witnessed, Jessica immediately understood the implication. Jessica had noticed subtle changes in their mother's behavior over the past few weeks. Diana had been receiving more phone calls that she took in private, stepping onto the front porch or into the laundry room. She had also started wearing perfume regularly and had purchased new clothes that she described as necessary for her expanded role at the community center. The siblings agreed to observe their mother's behavior more carefully before jumping to conclusions. They did not want to falsely accuse her of something serious, but they also felt responsible for protecting their family if their suspicions were correct. Their surveillance efforts revealed additional concerning evidence. Diana had started working late several evenings per week, always on days when Marcus was dealing with overtime assignments. She made excuses to run errands alone, often taking longer than necessary for simple tasks like grocery shopping. Most telling, she had become secretive about her phone, carrying it with her constantly and positioning it face down during family meals. Michael, the youngest, noticed changes without understanding their significance. He asked his siblings why their mother had started humming unfamiliar songs and why she seemed distracted during their usual evening activities. His innocent observations provided additional confirmation of what Thomas and Jessica were beginning to accept. The siblings faced an impossible choice. They could confront their mother directly, but this approach risked destroying family relationships if they were wrong about her behavior. They could tell their father about their suspicions, but this option threatened to tear their family apart if they were right. They could also remain silent and hope the situation would resolve itself naturally. Thomas, as the eldest, felt the weight of responsibility most heavily. He remembered his parents' lectures about honesty and integrity, but he also understood that some truths could cause irreparable damage. His parents had always presented a united front to their children, and he could not imagine how his father would react to learning about his wife's betrayal. Jessica worried about the emotional impact on Michael, who was still young enough to believe their family was perfect and permanent. She also felt conflicted about her close relationship with her mother, wondering if she should give Diana an opportunity to explain her actions before involving their father. The children ultimately decided to give their mother a chance to end the relationship voluntarily. Thomas, speaking for all three siblings, approached Diana one evening when Marcus was working late. He told her they were concerned about changes in her behavior and asked if everything was acceptable with her work at the community center. Diana's reaction confirmed their worst fears. She became defensive and asked pointed questions about what they had observed and whom they had told. When Thomas assured her they had not spoken to their father, Diana's relief was visible. She promised to spend more time with the family and asked them to be patient while she dealt with some temporary work stress. The children's intervention had the opposite effect of what they intended. Instead of ending her relationship with Ryan, Diana became more careful about hiding it. She recognized that her children were watching her behavior closely, so she developed more sophisticated methods of deception. Diana began meeting Ryan at locations outside of Bluebird, driving to neighboring towns where they were less likely to encounter familiar faces. She told Marcus she was attending professional development workshops and volunteer training sessions, explanations that seemed reasonable given her expanded responsibilities at the community center. The siblings found themselves becoming active participants in their mother's deception. When Marcus asked about Diana's whereabouts during her absences, the children provided vague answers about her work commitments. They felt trapped between their loyalty to both parents, unable to betray their mother while simultaneously lying to their father. Thomas struggled with the moral implications of their silence. His basketball coach had often spoken about the importance of integrity, both on and off the court, emphasizing that character was demonstrated through actions during difficult situations. Thomas wondered if protecting his family's stability justified participating in his mother's deception. Jessica channeled her emotional turmoil into her artwork, creating increasingly dark and complex sketches that reflected her internal conflict. Her art teacher noticed the change in her work and asked if everything was acceptable at home. Jessica assured her teacher that her family was fine, adding another layer of deception to her daily routine. Michael, despite his young age, sensed the tension among his family members. He asked his siblings why everyone seemed worried, and why their parents had stopped laughing together during dinner. Thomas and Jessica worked together to reassure Michael that everything was normal, but their efforts felt hollow and unconvincing. The first close call occurred on a Friday evening in November. Marcus had finished his work project early and decided to surprise Diana by picking her up at the community center. When he arrived, the building was locked and empty. Marcus called Diana's phone, but she did not answer immediately. When she finally returned his call 20 minutes later, she explained that she had stepped out to grab coffee and had left her phone in the building. Diana's explanation satisfied Marcus, but Thomas overheard the conversation and realized how close their family had come to disaster. He confronted his mother the next day, urging her to end her relationship before their father discovered the truth. Diana promised to consider his advice, but made no commitment to change her behavior. The second close call happened during Thanksgiving week. Ryan had given Diana an expensive bracelet, which she wore to the family's traditional holiday dinner preparation. Marcus noticed the jewelry and asked when Diana had bought it. She claimed to have purchased it for herself as a reward for her hard work at the community center, but Marcus seemed puzzled by the expense. Jessica noticed her father's expression and quickly changed the subject by asking about plans for Christmas decorations. Her intervention prevented further questions about the bracelet, but the incident left the entire family feeling unsettled. The children's academic performance began to suffer under the stress of maintaining their mother's secret. Thomas's basketball coach noticed his distraction during practice and asked if he was dealing with personal problems. Jessica's art teacher observed changes in her personality, noting that she had become withdrawn and anxious. Michael's elementary school teacher contacted Diana to express concern about his difficulty concentrating in class. Diana attributed her children's behavior changes to typical adolescent challenges and academic pressure. She assured their teachers that the family was providing appropriate support, but privately she worried that her secret was affecting her children's well-being. The most dangerous close call occurred in early December. Marcus had decided to surprise Diana by bringing her lunch at the community center. When he arrived, he found the building empty, except for maintenance staff, who told him Diana had left hours earlier. Marcus waited in the parking lot for 30 minutes before calling Diana's phone. Diana was having lunch with Ryan at a restaurant 15 miles away when her husband called. She told Marcus she was meeting with a vendor about holiday decorations and would be home within an hour. Marcus accepted her explanation, but his tone suggested growing suspicion about her frequent absences and vague explanations. That evening, Marcus asked pointed questions about Diana's work schedule and the nature of her various meetings. He wondered why her expanded role seemed to require so many meetings outside of regular business hours. Diana provided detailed explanations about grant requirements and vendor coordination, but her answers seemed rehearsed and overly complicated. The truth came out on a cold December evening when Marcus arrived home early from work due to equipment breakdown at his construction site. He had been feeling unwell with a persistent headache and decided to rest rather than find alternative tasks to fill the remaining work hours. Marcus expected to find Diana preparing dinner, as she typically did on weekdays when she worked normal hours at the community center. Instead, he discovered a note on the kitchen counter explaining that she had been called to an emergency meeting about the holiday festival and would return by 7 o'clock. Something about the note bothered Marcus. Diana's handwriting looked hurried, and she had not mentioned any potential emergency meetings during their conversation that morning. He decided to call the community center to ask about the meeting, but no one answered the main office phone. Marcus then called Diana's cell phone, but it went directly to voicemail. He left a message asking her to call him back and expressing concern about her emergency meeting. When Diana had not returned his call after an hour, Marcus decided to drive to the community center to check on her. The community center parking lot was empty, except for maintenance vehicles. Marcus spoke with the janitor, who told him no meetings had been scheduled for that evening, and that Diana had left the building at her usual time around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Marcus felt a cold realization settling in his stomach. He had been trying to dismiss his growing suspicions about Diana's behavior, but the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. He drove home slowly, trying to decide how to confront his wife about her deception. When Marcus arrived home, he found Thomas, Jessica, and Michael doing homework at the kitchen table. He asked them if they knew where their mother had gone, and their evasive answers confirmed his worst fears. The children clearly knew something they were not telling him. Marcus sat down with his children and gently but firmly asked them to tell him the truth about their mother's recent behavior. Thomas, Jessica, and Michael exchanged worried glances before Thomas took responsibility as the eldest and explained what they had observed over the past few months. The children's revelations hit Marcus like physical blows. Learning about Diana's affair was devastating, but discovering that his children had been carrying this burden alone made the betrayal even more painful. He assured them that they were not responsible for their mother's choices, and that he was proud of their efforts to protect the family. Marcus decided to wait for Diana to return home, rather than tracking her down at her secret meeting location. He sent the children to their rooms and sat alone in the living room, trying to process the destruction of everything he had believed about his marriage and his life. Diana returned home at 8:30, 90 minutes later than promised in her note. She was surprised to find Marcus waiting in the living room instead of watching television in their bedroom, as he typically did on weekday evenings. Marcus calmly asked Diana to sit down and tell him about her emergency meeting. Diana began recounting a fabricated story about last-minute vendor cancellations and scheduling conflicts. But Marcus interrupted her with a quiet request for the truth. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything that had ever happened in the Martinez household. Diana initially denied any wrongdoing, but when Marcus presented the evidence the children had shared, she broke down and admitted to her relationship with Ryan Cooper. Marcus's reaction was not the explosion of anger Diana had feared. Instead, he sat quietly for several minutes, processing the information and trying to understand how their marriage had reached this point. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but filled with profound sadness. Marcus asked Diana if she loved Ryan and if she wanted to end their marriage. Diana's answers were confused and contradictory. She claimed to love both men and insisted she had never intended to hurt her family. She begged Marcus to forgive her and promised to end her relationship with Ryan immediately. The situation escalated when Diana's phone rang during their conversation. The caller identification showed Ryan's name, and Marcus asked Diana to answer the call on speakerphone. Ryan's voice filled the room as he asked Diana about their plans for the following evening, and mentioned a hotel room he had reserved in Austin. Marcus took the phone from Diana and introduced himself to Ryan. He calmly explained that Ryan was speaking with Diana's husband, and that their conversation was taking place in front of their 3 children, who were listening from the top of the stairs. Ryan's reaction was immediate and aggressive. He accused Marcus of controlling Diana and preventing her from pursuing happiness. He claimed that Diana had described Marcus as emotionally distant and unsupportive, allegations that shocked Marcus and devastated the children. The phone conversation became increasingly heated as Ryan refused to accept responsibility for his role in destroying a family. He suggested that Diana deserved better than a blue-collar husband who could not provide the lifestyle she wanted. His words were deliberately cruel and designed to provoke Marcus into an emotional reaction. Marcus maintained his composure until Ryan made disparaging comments about the children, suggesting that Diana's maternal responsibilities were holding her back from living her best life. This attack on his children triggered something primal in Marcus, and he told Ryan to come to the house immediately to continue their conversation in person. Diana begged Marcus to reconsider, but he was determined to confront the man who had helped destroy his family. She called Ryan back and told him not to come to the house, but Ryan was already on his way, motivated by anger and masculine pride. Ryan arrived at the Martinez house 30 minutes later, driving his expensive sports car and dressed in a suit. Despite the late hour, he knocked on the front door with aggressive confidence, apparently expecting to intimidate Marcus through his presence. Marcus answered the door and invited Ryan into the living room, where Diana was waiting with tears streaming down her face. The children remained upstairs, but they could hear every word of the confrontation that followed. The argument began with accusations and denials, but quickly escalated to personal attacks. Ryan questioned Marcus's worth as a husband and provider, while Marcus challenged Ryan's character and integrity. Diana tried to mediate between the two men, but her efforts only made the situation worse. The confrontation turned physical when Ryan made a threatening gesture toward Marcus during a particularly heated exchange. Marcus, who had years of construction work experience and physical strength, responded instinctively to what he perceived as a threat to his family. The fight that followed was brief but violent. Ryan, despite his confident demeanor, was no match for Marcus's size and strength. Within seconds, he was on the floor with a broken nose and multiple cuts from striking furniture during his fall. Diana screamed for Marcus to stop, and the sound of her voice broke through his anger. Marcus stepped away from Ryan, horrified by his own actions and the blood on the living room floor. Ryan was conscious but seriously injured, requiring immediate medical attention. Diana called 911 while Marcus tried to provide first aid to Ryan despite their conflict. The children came downstairs when they heard the sirens, and they witnessed the aftermath of violence that would haunt their family for years to come. 2 years after that devastating December night, the Martinez family had slowly begun to heal. Marcus had been charged with assault, but received a suspended sentence after Ryan chose not to pursue maximum penalties. Diana had ended her relationship with Ryan immediately after the confrontation and had spent months in counseling trying to understand her choices and their consequences. The family had remained together, though their relationships had been forever changed. Marcus and Diana attended marriage counseling and gradually rebuilt trust through honest communication and mutual commitment to their children's well-being. The children had also received counseling to help them process the trauma of that night and their role in the preceding months of deception. By December of the second year, the Martinez family had decided to renovate their home as a symbol of their fresh start. Marcus used his construction skills to plan extensive updates, including removing walls to create an open-concept living area and updating the kitchen with modern appliances. The renovation project was proceeding smoothly until workers discovered something unexpected behind the living room wall, where the confrontation had taken place. Embedded in the wall cavity was a small digital recording device, apparently placed there years earlier by the previous homeowner. The device had been recording continuously for over 4 years, capturing thousands of hours of family conversations, arguments, celebrations, and intimate moments. The discovery raised immediate privacy concerns, but it also presented an opportunity to review the events leading up to the confrontation from an objective perspective. Marcus and Diana debated whether to listen to the recordings, ultimately deciding that they needed to understand what had really happened during those difficult months. They listened to selected portions of the recordings together, with their counselor present to help them process the emotional impact. The recordings revealed details that none of them had fully understood at the time. They could hear the children's private conversations about their mother's affair, including their desperate attempts to find a solution that would protect both of their parents. Thomas's voice reflected the enormous burden he had carried as the eldest child, while Jessic's artistic sensibility had made her particularly aware of the emotional undercurrents in their home. Most shocking was a conversation between Diana and Ryan that had taken place in the living room just days before the confrontation. Ryan had been pressuring Diana to leave Marcus and move in with him, threatening to expose their affair if she refused. Diana had been trapped between her guilt about the affair and her fear of losing her children if Marcus sought custody in a divorce. The recording also captured Ryan's visit to the house on the night of the confrontation, including his aggressive behavior and threatening language toward Marcus. The audio evidence clearly showed that Marcus had acted in defense of his family, rather than as the aggressor in the physical altercation. Perhaps most importantly, the recordings revealed the depth of Marcus's love for his family throughout the crisis. Even after learning about Diana's affair, his primary concern had been protecting his children from emotional harm. His restraint during the confrontation had been remarkable, considering the provocation he had endured. Diana listened to her own voice on the recordings with a mixture of shame and self-recognition. She could hear how she had rationalized her choices and justified her deception, even to herself. The recordings forced her to confront the full impact of her actions on her family's emotional well-being. The hidden recordings became a catalyst for even deeper healing within the Martinez family. Hearing their experiences from an objective perspective helped each family member understand the other's motivations and emotions during those difficult months. Marcus gained a new appreciation for his children's maturity and their attempts to protect both of their parents. He realized that their secrecy had not been a betrayal of him, but rather a desperate attempt to hold their family together. This understanding allowed him to release any remaining resentment toward Thomas, Jessica, and Michael. Diana confronted the full consequences of her choices with a clarity she had not possessed during the affair. Hearing her own voice on the recordings helped her understand how she had gradually compromised her values and damaged her family relationships. This self-awareness strengthened her commitment to rebuilding trust with Marcus and their children. The children learned that their parents were human beings capable of making serious mistakes, but also capable of growth and redemption. They saw how their father had chosen forgiveness over revenge, and how their mother had chosen accountability over denial. These lessons would shape their own character development as they moved into adulthood. Thomas, now 18 and preparing for college, had developed remarkable leadership skills through his experience managing the family crisis. His basketball coach noted his increased maturity and recommended him for team captain during his senior year. Thomas planned to study counseling in college, inspired by his family's healing journey. Jessica, now 16, had channeled her artistic talents into community service projects that helped other families facing difficulties. Her art had evolved from dark expressions of internal conflict to hopeful representations of resilience and recovery. She won a statewide competition for a piece titled "Broken Things Can Be Beautiful." Michael, now 14 and approaching high school, had maintained his optimistic personality despite witnessing family trauma at a young age. His counselor noted his remarkable ability to find humor and joy even in difficult circumstances. Michael still planned to follow his father's career path, but had also developed an interest in family therapy. Marcus and Diana's marriage had emerged stronger than before, built on a foundation of honest communication rather than assumptions and unspoken expectations. They had learned to discuss their individual needs and frustrations before they became sources of resentment. Their counselor described their progress as remarkable and used their case as an example of successful family recovery. The community of Bluebird had initially been shocked by the Martinez family's crisis, but their response had ultimately been supportive. Church members had provided meals and childcare during the most difficult periods. Neighbors had offered practical help with home maintenance and transportation. The family's experience had prompted community discussions about supporting families in crisis rather than judging them. Ryan Cooper had moved away from Bluebird shortly after the confrontation, relocating to another state to start fresh. He had sent a letter of apology to the Martinez family 6 months later, acknowledging his role in their pain and expressing genuine remorse for his actions. The family had chosen to forgive him as part of their own healing process. The recording device discovery had also led to legal action against the previous homeowner for privacy violations. The Martinez family had donated their settlement money to organizations that provide counseling services for families in crisis, turning their negative experience into a positive contribution to their community. The Martinez family's journey from deception and betrayal to healing and redemption demonstrates that even the most devastating family crises can become opportunities for growth and stronger relationships. Their experience shows us that honest communication, forgiveness, and professional support can help families overcome seemingly impossible challenges. If you found yourself thinking about your own family relationships while listening to this account, you are not alone. Many families struggle with communication issues, trust problems, and the temptation to hide difficult truths from loved ones. The Martinez family's experience reminds us that secrets have a way of growing larger and more destructive over time, but that truth-telling, while painful in the short term, creates opportunities for authentic healing and deeper connections. What lessons from the Martinez family's experience resonated most strongly with you? Have you faced similar challenges in maintaining honest communication with your own family members? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if this account prompted you to consider your own family dynamics, please share your reflections with others who might benefit from this discussion. Do not forget to subscribe to True Crime Seat for more accounts of families who have faced extraordinary challenges and found ways to emerge stronger and more connected than before. These stories remind us that redemption is always possible, even in our darkest moments.